The great meeting hall of the Galactic Defense Council stretched for miles under a dome made of pure crystal. 12 different alien races sat around a massive circular table that could hold 1,000 beings. The air hummed with translation, devices working overtime as angry voices filled the space. Commander Zephix stood tall at his position. His body looked like it was made of living glass, catching the light from 3 different suns that shone through the crystal dome. His voice rang out clear and sharp like breaking ice. These humans are nothing but primitives. They only just learned how to travel between stars last year. What could they possibly offer us in our war against the Devourers? The Devourers were the most feared enemy in the galaxy. They moved from star to star like a plague, eating entire worlds and leaving nothing behind. For 50 years, the Galactic Defense Council had fought them. For 50 years, they had been losing. High Admiral Korath clicked his mandibles together in annoyance. He was 12 feet tall with 6 arms and compound eyes that could see in directions that hurt to think about. His people, the Hive Collective, had been warriors for millions of years. To him, humans were barely worth noticing. "I have read their military files," Korath said, his voice buzzing like 1,000 angry wasps. "Their weapons are crude. Their ships are slow. Their soldiers die from things that would barely scratch our warriors. Why are we even discussing this?" Around the table, other voices joined in. General Thox of the Kregan Republic slammed his massive fist on the table. His people looked like walking mountains of muscle and bone, covered in scars from countless battles. Each Kregan warrior was worth 10 normal soldiers, and they knew it. "The humans fight with chemical explosives and metal bullets," Thox growled. "My people use plasma cannons and quantum disruptors. One of my soldiers could defeat 100 of theirs." More voices rose in agreement. The Thermal Brotherhood's representative hissed through his flame-covered mouth. The Ice Lords clicked their agreement with sounds like glaciers breaking. The Machine Collective beeped and whirred their mechanical disapproval, but one voice remained. Silent Ambassador Lyrian of the ethereal realm sat quietly at her position. Her people looked like they were made of starlight and dreams. They could read minds and see the future, though they rarely spoke of what they saw. When she finally stood, the entire hall fell silent. "Perhaps," she said, her voice echoing directly, in everyone's mind, "we should look more carefully at what these humans have actually accomplished." "What could they have accomplished?" Zephix scoffed. "They have been in space for less than 1 of their years. We have been traveling the stars since before their son was born." Lyrian's starlight form shimmered. "I have seen their minds. There is something there that we do not understand, something that might surprise us." "Surprise us?" Korath's laughter sounded like angry insects. "What could possibly surprise us about such a young race?" Before Lyrian could answer, the great doors of the council chamber opened with a sound like thunder. The human delegation walked in, and the aliens got their first look at Earth's representatives. Admiral Sarah Chen led the group. She was a small woman by human standards, barely 5.5 feet tall. Her hair was gray, and lines around her eyes showed that she had seen many difficult years. Behind her walked 3 other humans in dark blue uniforms, but it was the man walking beside her that caught everyone's attention. Master Sergeant Jake Morrison looked like he had been carved from old wood and weathered stone. He was not tall, compared to most aliens in the room. He was not wide like the Kregan warriors. He did not glow like the Ethereals or shine like the Viridians. He was just a man in a simple uniform with short gray hair and quiet eyes. Yet something about him made the Great Hall feel smaller. Morrison walked with the easy stride of someone who had seen every kind of danger and lived to tell about it. His face showed no expression, but his eyes moved constantly, taking in every detail of the room, every exit, every potential threat. Without realizing it, several of the alien warriors shifted in their seats. Admiral Chen stopped at the center of the circle and saluted the council. Honorable representatives, we thank you for considering Earth's application to join the Galactic Defense Council. Zephix's crystal form flickered with impatience. Yes, we have reviewed your files. Your people have potential, perhaps. But you are too new to space travel, too inexperienced in galactic warfare. Come back in a few hundred years. With respect, Commander, Chen replied calmly. We believe we can contribute to the war effort. Now. This brought fresh laughter from around the table. General Thox's booming voice filled the hall. Contribute? What could you possibly contribute? Your largest ships carry fewer than 1,000 crew members. Our smallest destroyers carry 10 times that number. Chen nodded. You are correct. We cannot match your numbers or your technology, but we believe we can offer something else. Something that might make a difference. And what would that be? Korath asked, still clicking with amusement. Chen gestured to Morrison. Experience. More laughter filled the hall. Ambassador Lyrian alone remained silent, her starlight eyes fixed on Morrison with growing interest. Experience? Zephix's voice was sharp with disbelief. This being has experience? Our warriors have fought across the galaxy for thousands of years. Our most decorated champion, War Prime Nexus, has personally eliminated 47,000 enemy combatants in battles across multiple star systems. The number hung in the air like a challenge. 47,000 kills was a record that few warriors in galactic history had ever approached. War Prime Nexus was legendary among the Viridian Empire, a warrior whose name was spoken with reverence across a dozen worlds. Chen looked around the room at the assembled aliens. Would you like to see Master Sergeant Morrison's record? This should be amusing, Thox rumbled. What could one primitive human possibly have achieved? Chen reached into her uniform and pulled out a small device. She placed it on the table, and a holographic display appeared above it. The display showed Morrison's military file, complete with service record, medals, and combat statistics. The aliens leaned forward to read the strange human writing. Translation devices worked to convert the symbols into something they could understand. As the numbers became clear, the laughter in the hall began to die away. Korath was the first to speak. His voice had lost its buzzing amusement. This translation must be incorrect. Chen checked the display. The translation is accurate, Admiral. Zephix's crystal form flickered faster now, a sign of extreme agitation among his people. This number cannot be correct. No single warrior could achieve such a count. The display showed Morrison's confirmed kill count, 2,347,891. The silence in the Great Hall was complete. Not even the translation devices made a sound. General Thox stood slowly, his mountain-like form towering over the table. This is impossible. No being in the galaxy has ever achieved such numbers. Morrison spoke for the first time since entering the chamber. His voice was quiet and rough, like gravel in a desert wind. The number is correct, sir. How? Lyrian's mental voice carried a mixture of awe and disbelief. How could one warrior eliminate over 2 million enemies? Morrison looked directly at her, and for a moment, his quiet eyes showed depths that made the ethereal ambassador step back mentally. Most of those kills came from a single battle, ma'am. One battle? Korath's translator struggled with his rapid clicking. You eliminated over 2 million enemies in one battle? Not enemies, sir. Pirates. They had taken hostages. The word hostages sent a ripple through the assembled aliens. Every race in the galaxy understood the concept, though few dealt with such situations the way humans did. Chen activated another file. The Battle of Thermopylae Station, an asteroid mining facility in the outer rim of human space. 3,000 civilian miners and their families were taken hostage by a pirate fleet. Images appeared in the holographic display. The asteroid was massive, honeycombed with mining tunnels and processing facilities. It was home to one of humanity's largest mining operations, extracting rare minerals needed for their growing space fleet. The pirates numbered over 2,000 fighters, Chen continued. They had modern weapons, military training, and complete control of the facility. They demanded ransom for the hostages and threatened to execute them if any rescue was attempted. Standard pirate tactics, Thox noted. What was your response? Chen looked at Morrison. We sent in Master Sergeant Morrison. One warrior? Zefix's form flickered with confusion. Against 2,000 pirates holding 3,000 hostages? Morrison nodded. Yes, sir. That is not tactics, Korath said. That is suicide. The mission parameters were simple, Chen explained. Eliminate the pirate threat and rescue all hostages. The sergeant had 14 days to complete the mission before the pirates began executing civilians. How long did it take? Lyrian asked. Though her mental voice suggested she already knew the answer would surprise her, Morrison's expression never changed. 7 days, ma'am. The alien stared at him. Around the table, representatives of races that had conquered Star systems and fought wars for millennia struggled to understand what they were hearing. 7 days to eliminate 2,000 pirates? Thox asked slowly. Yes, sir. And the hostages? All 3,000 rescued safely. All of them? Zefix's voice was barely a whisper. Morrison nodded once. All of them. The silence stretched on. Finally, Korath leaned forward, his compound eyes focusing intently on Morrison. Tell us how. Morrison looked around the room at the assembled aliens. These beings had technology that could destroy planets. They had weapons that could crack moons and ships that could travel faster than light. They had been fighting wars since before his species had discovered fire. But as he began to speak, every one of them listened with the attention of students learning from a master. The asteroid had been mined for 30 years, Morrison said. It was like a giant maze of tunnels and chambers. The pirates thought that made them safe. They thought they could hide in the deep places and use the hostages as shields. He paused, and something that might have been a smile touched the corner of his mouth. They were wrong. Admiral Chen touched her device again, and new images appeared. These showed detailed maps of the asteroid's interior, with thousands of tunnels, chambers, and connecting passages marked in different colors. The sergeant spent the first day studying these maps, Chen said, learning every passage, every chamber, every way in and out of the facility. 1 day to memorize such a complex structure? Lyrian asked. Morrison shrugged. Had to be done, ma'am. You can't fight effectively in terrain you don't understand. The aliens began to lean forward. This was something they could understand. Every military in the galaxy knew the importance of knowing your battlefield. What was your next step? Thox asked. Infiltration, Morrison replied. Had to get inside without the pirates knowing. How does one being infiltrate a facility held by 2,000 enemies? Korath wanted to know. Morrison's eyes grew distant, as if he was seeing the asteroid again in his memory. The pirates were overconfident. They had sentries at the main entrances and the landing bays, but they figured nobody would be crazy enough to come through the old mining shafts. Chen activated another display. This one showed the exterior of the asteroid, covered with thousands of small openings where mining equipment had once operated. These shafts go deep into the asteroid, Morrison continued. Some of them connect to the main tunnel system. The pirates had sealed some of them, but not all. They couldn't watch every hole in a rock that size. So you entered through an abandoned mining shaft, Lyrian said. Yes, ma'am. Took 12 hours to reach the main facility level without being detected. The aliens nodded. This was good tactics, the kind of infiltration their own special forces might attempt. Once inside, what was your strategy? Zefix asked. Morrison was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, His voice carried a weight that made the enormous hall feel small and cramped. Sometimes the best way to win is to let your enemy think they're winning until it's too late for them to realize they're already dead. The words hung in the air like a promise of violence. Around the table, warriors who had conquered worlds felt a chill that had nothing to do with temperature. Ambassador Lyrian's Starlight form dimmed slightly. "What did you do, Sergeant Morrison?" Morrison looked directly at her, and in his quiet eyes she saw something that made her ancient mind recoil. The word hunted echoed through the great crystal dome like a stone dropped into still water. The alien representatives around the massive table shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Warriors who had seen battles across 1,000 worlds suddenly found themselves looking at a quiet human with new eyes. High Admiral Korath's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of deep agitation among his people. "You hunted 2,000 armed pirates? Inside a facility they controlled?" Morrison nodded once. "Yes, sir." "Impossible," General Thox rumbled, his mountain-like frame leaning forward. "No single warrior could track and eliminate so many enemies in such confined space. The logistics alone would be—" He trailed off, his scarred face showing confusion, as he tried to imagine how such a thing could be accomplished. Commander Zefix's crystal form flickered with patterns that showed he was accessing the Viridian Empire's vast military databases. "I am searching our records for any historical precedent. In 3 million years of recorded galactic warfare, no single warrior has achieved such numbers in close combat. Your records must be incomplete," Chen said calmly. "Or perhaps your warriors have never faced the kind of situation that required such methods." This brought angry responses from around the table. The representative of the Thermal Brotherhood, whose people lived inside stars and fought with fire itself, spoke through his flame-covered mouth. "You dare suggest that human tactics are superior to ours? My people have reduced entire fleets to ash. And my people have conquered 47 star systems through pure force," added the Ice Lord's delegate, her voice like wind across frozen mountains. The Machine Collective's representative spoke in electronic beeps and whistles that the translators converted to words. "Human combat efficiency does not compute. Their biological limitations should prevent such achievements." Morrison listened to the protests without expression. When the voices died down, he spoke quietly. "With respect, you're all thinking about this wrong." "Wrong?" Korath's compound eyes focused on him with laser intensity. "Explain." "You're thinking about it like a battle between armies, like fleets meeting in space or armies clashing on a planet's surface. That's not what this was." Admiral Chen activated her display device again. New images appeared showing the interior of Thermopylae Station. The mining facility was a maze of tunnels, chambers, and processing areas that stretched for miles through. "The asteroid's interior." "This wasn't a battle," Morrison continued. "It was pest control." The silence that followed was broken only by the soft hum of translation devices working overtime. The aliens stared at Morrison, trying to understand what he meant. Ambassador Lyrian was the first to grasp it. Her starlight form shimmered with understanding and something that might have been fear. "You did not fight them as soldiers. You eliminated them as vermin." Morrison met her gaze directly. "The pirates weren't soldiers, ma'am. They were criminals who got their hands on military weapons. There's a difference." "What difference?" Zefix asked, his crystal voice sharp with curiosity. "Soldiers have discipline. They follow orders. They stick together and watch each other's backs. Soldiers are predictable." Morrison's eyes grew distant again. "Pirates are just bullies with guns. They're brave when they think they're winning, but they panic when things go wrong." Chen brought up tactical displays showing the layout of the asteroid facility. The pirates had distributed themselves throughout the station to maintain control. Small groups of 10 to 20 fighters in key locations, with the main force concentrated around the hostages. "Standard occupation tactics," Thox noted approvingly. They controlled all the important areas while keeping their main strength ready to respond to threats. It would have worked against a traditional assault, Chen agreed. But Sergeant Morrison didn't conduct a traditional assault. Morrison stood and walked to the holographic display. Despite being surrounded by beings who could crush him without effort, he moved with the calm confidence of someone who had never met a situation he couldn't handle. The pirates made 3 mistakes, he said, pointing to different areas of the display. First, they assumed anyone coming after them would try to fight all of them at once. Second, they thought controlling the main areas meant they controlled the whole facility. Third, they believed their weapons and numbers made them unbeatable. He touched the display, and red dots appeared throughout the station's map. Each dot represented a group of pirates. 23 separate groups spread across 47 levels of the station. The smallest group had 8 members. The largest had 35. Each group thought they were safe because they had backup nearby. They did have backup nearby, Korath pointed out. 23 groups supporting each other is a strong defensive position. Morrison's finger traced lines through the display, showing the connections between different sections of the station. They would have been right if they could have communicated with each other, but mining facilities are built to contain explosions and toxic gas leaks. Each section can be sealed off independently. Understanding began to dawn on several faces around the table. Zephix's crystal form brightened. You isolated them. The station's emergency systems were designed to seal off damaged sections automatically, Morrison continued. All I had to do was trigger the right alarms in the right places. Chen activated another file. This one showed Morrison's infiltration route through the station, marked in blue against the red dots of the pirate positions. The sergeant spent his second day inside the station mapping the pirates' exact positions and patrol routes. He identified their communication systems, their supply lines, and their emergency procedures. How? The Ice Lord's representative wanted to know. How does one being gather such intelligence without being detected? Morrison shrugged. Pirates are lazy. They don't expect anyone to be watching them, so they don't bother to hide what they're doing. I spent 36 hours crawling through ventilation shafts and maintenance tunnels, listening to them talk. 36 hours without rest? Thox asked, impressed despite himself. Had a job to do, Morrison replied simply. The Machine Collective's representative beeped skeptically. Biological limitations should have prevented extended surveillance without detection. Maybe for your people, Morrison said without offense. Humans are persistence hunters. We're built to keep going when other species would collapse. Back on Earth, my ancestors could chase prey for days without stopping. Lyrian's mental voice carried new understanding. You hunted the pirates the same way your ancestors hunted animals. Similar principles, Morrison agreed. Learn their habits, understand their weaknesses, wait for the right moment, then strike when they're most vulnerable. Chen brought up a timeline display showing Morrison's activities during his 3rd day in the station. On day 3, the sergeant began his systematic elimination of the pirate groups. How? Korath demanded. 23 groups, some with 35 members each. Even eliminating one group would alert the others. Morrison turned back to the display. That's where the emergency systems came in handy. Mining stations have lots of ways to kill people accidentally. Gas leaks, electrical failures, structural collapses, equipment malfunctions. His finger touched different areas of the display as he spoke. Group 7 was eliminated by a carbon monoxide leak in Section 12. Group 15 died when the artificial gravity failed in their area, and they were crushed against the ceiling. Group 22 was caught in an airlock malfunction. The aliens stared at him. These were beings whose technology could destroy planets, whose weapons could crack moons. But the quiet efficiency of Morrison's methods sent chills through the Great Hall. You made it look like accidents, Zephix said. Slowly. For the first few groups, yes, had to keep the others from panicking too early. Once they started getting suspicious, the accidents stopped working. "What did you do then?" Lyrian asked, though her mental voice suggested she wasn't sure she wanted to know. Morrison's expression hardened slightly. "Then I stopped trying to hide." Chen activated another display. This one showed the station's layout on Morrison's fourth day, with several sections marked in black. By day 4, 11 pirate groups had been eliminated, she explained. The remaining groups were beginning to realize they were under attack. How did they respond? Thox wanted to know. They did what? Bullies always do when someone fights back, Morrison said. They got scared and started making mistakes. The display showed the remaining red dots clustering together as the surviving pirates abandoned their positions to form larger groups. They gave up their strategic positions to huddle together for protection, Chen noted. Classic panic response. Morrison nodded. Fear makes people stupid. The pirates started abandoning their posts to join up with other groups. They figured more guns in one place meant more safety. A reasonable tactical decision, Korath observed. Would have been if they were fighting an army, Morrison agreed. But they weren't fighting an army. They were being hunted by one person who knew the station better than they did. He touched the display again, and new lines appeared showing Morrison's movements through the facility. When they clustered together, they became easier targets. Bigger groups are harder to hide, make more noise, and need more supplies. You track them by their resource consumption, Zephix realized. Among other things, big groups of scared people use more air, more water, more power. The station's monitoring systems showed me exactly where they were and how many were in each group. The timeline display advanced to day 5. The red dots representing pirates had shrunk from 23 groups to 8 larger clusters. Day 5 was when things got interesting, Morrison said with something that might have been satisfaction. The pirates finally figured out they were dealing with something they'd never faced before. What did they do? Lyrian asked. Morrison's eyes grew cold. They threatened to start killing hostages. The temperature in the Great Hall seemed to drop several degrees. Around the table, alien warriors who had seen countless battles suddenly understood that they were listening to something beyond their experience. That, Morrison said quietly, was their final mistake. Admiral Chen stood and moved to stand beside Morrison. What happened next changed everything, not just for the pirates, but for anyone who thinks they understand what humans are capable of when innocent lives are threatened. Morrison looked around the table at the assembled aliens. These beings commanded fleets that could sterilize worlds. They had weapons that could crack planets and technology that bordered on magic. But as he began to describe what happened next, every one of them leaned forward like children listening to a ghost story. When the pirates threatened the hostages, Morrison said, his voice carrying the weight of absolute certainty, they stopped being a tactical problem and became a moral one, and humans don't negotiate with moral problems. What do you mean? Korath asked, though his clicking mandibles suggested he was beginning to understand. Morrison's gaze swept the room, taking in each alien representative. I mean that when you threaten innocent people in front of a human, you stop being an enemy to be defeated and become a disease to be cured. The silence that followed was broken only by the soft hum of the translation devices. In that silence, 12 different alien races began to understand that they had underestimated humanity in ways they were only beginning to comprehend. Tell us, Lyrian said, her mental voice barely a whisper. What happened to the pirates who threatened the hostages? Morrison looked directly at her, and in his quiet eyes she saw the answer before he spoke it. I taught them the difference between a warrior and a predator. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Around the massive crystal table, alien representatives who had conquered star systems and commanded fleets that could destroy worlds found themselves staring at a quiet human who spoke of teaching lessons to those who threatened the innocent. Ambassador Lyrian's Starlight form dimmed as she processed what Morrison had said. What is the difference, Sergeant Morrison, between a warrior and a predator? Morrison was silent for a long moment, his weathered face showing memories of things that had happened in the dark tunnels of Thermopylae Station. When he spoke, his voice carried a weight that made the enormous hall feel small and cold. A warrior fights for victory. A predator hunts for survival. Admiral Chen activated her display device, and new images appeared above the table. These showed the asteroid facility on Morrison's 5th day after the pirates had made their threat against the hostages. When the pirates threatened to execute civilians, the mission parameters changed, Chen explained. This was no longer a rescue operation. It became an extermination. High Admiral Korath's compound eyes focused intently on the display. How many pirate groups remained at this point? 8 clusters, Morrison replied. Total of 347 pirates still alive. They had consolidated into defensible positions throughout the station. Commander Zefix's crystal form flickered with interest. Defensible positions are difficult to assault, even for superior forces. How does one being attack fortified enemies? Morrison stepped closer to the holographic display. Despite being surrounded by aliens who could crush him without effort, he moved with the calm confidence of someone explaining a simple problem to students. You don't attack defensible positions, he said. You make them indefensible. His finger touched the display, and the image changed to show a detailed cross-section of the asteroid mining facility. The structure was revealed to be far more complex than it had first appeared, with multiple levels, interconnected systems, and thousands of support tunnels. Mining operations require massive infrastructure, Morrison continued. Power systems, air recycling, water treatment, gravity generators, structural support. Everything connected to everything else. General Thox leaned forward, his mountain-like frame creaking. You attacked their infrastructure. I became their infrastructure's worst nightmare, Morrison corrected. Every system in that station was designed with multiple backups and safety protocols. But those same systems could be turned into weapons if you knew how. Chen activated another file. This one showed detailed schematics of the station's power grid, environmental systems, and structural supports. The sergeant spent his first 4 days learning more about that facility than the people who built it, she said. He understood every pipe, every wire, every support beam. How is such detailed knowledge possible in so short a time? The Machine Collective's representative asked, its electronic voice carrying skeptical beeps. Morrison shrugged. Had to be done. You can't control what you don't understand. Control? Lyrian's mental voice carried a note of growing unease. What did you control? Morrison's expression hardened. Everything. The display changed again, showing Morrison's movements through the station on day 5. Unlike his previous careful infiltration routes, these paths were direct and purposeful, cutting straight through areas that had been occupied by pirates. The sergeant stopped hiding, Chen explained. He began systematic elimination of each pirate cluster, one at a time. How? Korath demanded. 300 armed pirates in fortified positions. Even our elite forces would require heavy weapons and multiple assault teams. Morrison touched the display, and a detailed view of one section appeared. It showed a group of 43 pirates barricaded in what had been the station's main cafeteria. They had overturned tables for cover and blocked all the entrances except one, which they watched constantly. Group 3 thought they were safe in the cafeteria, Morrison said. Good fields of fire, only one way in, plenty of supplies. They could hold that position for weeks against a conventional assault. But you did not conduct a conventional assault, Zefix observed. No, I turned off their air. The simple statement sent a chill through the assembled aliens. The display showed the environmental controls for that section of the station, with Morrison's access codes highlighted in blue. The cafeteria's atmospheric system was controlled from the central environmental station, Morrison continued. All I had to do was close the right valves and redirect the airflow. Gave them about 20 minutes before they started getting sleepy. You suffocated them. the Ice Lord's representative said, her voice like wind across frozen wasteland. I gave them a choice, Morrison corrected. They could surrender and live, or stay where they were and die. 43 pirates chose to die, rather than surrender. Thox's scarred face showed grudging respect. They died as warriors, at least. Morrison's eyes grew cold. They died as fools. Warriors protect the innocent. Pirates threaten them. There's no honor in dying as a pirate. The display advanced to show another section of the station where a group of 31 pirates had barricaded themselves in the main control room. This was a more formidable position, with reinforced walls and independent life support systems. Group 5 thought they were clever, Morrison said. The control room was the most secure location in the station, reinforced against explosions, independent power and air, multiple communication systems to coordinate with other groups. How did you eliminate them? Lyrian asked, though her mental voice suggested she wasn't sure she wanted to know. Morrison pointed to the structural details shown in the display. The control room was built to withstand explosions from outside. It wasn't designed to contain explosions from inside. The image zoomed in to show the room's internal systems. Gas lines for equipment, electrical conduits, pressurized storage tanks for emergency supplies. I introduced a spark into their gas system, Morrison said simply. 31 pirates eliminated in 4 seconds. The silence in the Great Hall was complete. Even the translation devices seemed to have stopped humming. You turned their own defenses against them, Korath said slowly. Every fortress is also a prison, Morrison replied. Every strength becomes a weakness if you approach it correctly. Chen activated the next file. By the end of day 5, 6 of the 8 remaining pirate groups had been eliminated. Only 2 clusters remained, totaling 112 pirates. The display showed the final 2 pirate positions. One group of 67 pirates had fortified the main docking bay, where their ships were parked. The other group of 45 had taken control of the hostage area itself. The remaining pirates made a strategic decision, Chen continued. They combined their forces and made their final stand around the hostages themselves, using the civilians as human shields, Thox noted with disgust. Cowards' tactics. Morrison nodded. The 45 pirates in the hostage area figured I wouldn't risk civilian lives with explosions or environmental attacks. They were right. And the 67 in the docking bay? Zephix asked. They were planning to escape if things went bad, load the hostages onto their ships and use them as bargaining chips during their getaway. The display showed both positions in detail. The hostage area was a converted cargo bay where 3,000 miners and their families were being held. The pirates had set up overlapping fields of fire and positioned themselves so that any attack would inevitably harm civilians. How do you assault such a position without civilian casualties? Lyrian asked. Morrison was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of absolute certainty. You don't assault it. You make them come to you. The display changed to show Morrison's position on day 6. Instead of approaching either pirate stronghold, he had taken a position in the station's central hub, where all the major systems converged. I made an announcement over the station's communication system, Morrison said. Told them exactly where I was and exactly what I was going to do. You revealed your position to over 100 armed enemies? Korath's mandibles clicked with disbelief. I gave them a choice, Morrison corrected. They could come and fight me one-on-one in the central hub, or I would start shutting down life support for the entire station. The aliens stared at him. Chen activated another file showing Morrison's message to the pirates, transmitted throughout the station. Morrison's recorded voice filled the hall. This is Master Sergeant Morrison, Earth Defense Forces. You have threatened innocent civilians under my protection. You have 1 hour to send your champions to face me in single combat, or I will begin systematic shutdown of all life support systems. Your choice is simple. Fight me like warriors, or die like the cowards you are." "You challenge them to single combat?" Thox asked, his voice carrying surprise and approval. "I gave them a chance to die with some dignity," Morrison replied. "More than they deserved, but less than they feared." The display showed the central hub where Morrison had positioned himself. It was a large, circular chamber where all the station's major corridors converged. Perfect visibility in all directions, multiple exits, and most importantly, access to every critical system in the facility. "Did they accept your challenge?" Lyrian asked. Morrison's expression showed something that might have been disappointment. "They tried to be clever instead." The display changed to show the pirates' response. Instead of sending champions for single combat, they had divided into smaller groups and attempted to assault Morrison's position from multiple directions simultaneously. 47 pirates from the docking bay group tried to storm the central hub, Chen explained. "They thought overwhelming numbers would give them victory." "What happened to them?" Zephyx asked, though his crystal form was already flickering with anticipation. Morrison's voice was as flat and emotionless as a weather report. "I turned off the gravity in the approach corridors. 47 pirates tried to assault a prepared position while floating helplessly in zero gravity. It took me 11 minutes to eliminate all of them." The display showed heat signatures moving through the corridors toward Morrison's position, then the sudden cessation of movement as the artificial gravity failed. What followed was systematically recorded by the station's security cameras, though the images were too graphic for the holographic display to show clearly. "The remaining 20 pirates in the docking bay decided to run," Chen continued. "They tried to reach their ships and escape." "Did they succeed?" Korath asked. Morrison shook his head. "I had sabotaged their ships on day 2. When they tried to start the engines, the ships exploded. 20 pirates eliminated instantly. That left only the group holding the hostages," Lyrian observed. Morrison nodded. 45 pirates, 3,000 civilians. The final test." The display showed the hostage area in detail. The pirates had positioned themselves strategically throughout the converted cargo bay, using the miners and their families as cover. Any conventional assault would result in massive civilian casualties. "How do you rescue 3,000 hostages from 45 desperate enemies without losses?" Thox asked. Morrison looked around the table at the assembled aliens. These beings commanded technologies that could reshape worlds, weapons that could crack planets, forces that had conquered star systems. But as he prepared to describe the final phase of his mission, every one of them listened with the attention of students learning from a master. "You make them believe they've already won," Morrison said quietly. "Then you teach them how wrong they are." Admiral Chen activated the final files showing Morrison's approach to the hostage area, but instead of the direct assault the aliens expected, the display showed something that made them all lean forward in confusion. Morrison had simply walked up to the main entrance of the hostage area and knocked on the door. "You surrendered?" Zephyx asked, his crystal form flickering with confusion. Morrison's smile was colder than the space between stars. "I introduced myself." The word "introduced" echoed through the crystal dome like the tolling of a bell. Around the massive table, alien representatives who had commanded fleets and conquered worlds found themselves holding their breath as they waited for Morrison to explain what kind of introduction required knocking on a door held by 45 desperate pirates. Morrison stood before the holographic display, his weathered face showing memories of things that had happened in the converted cargo bay of Thermopylae Station. When he spoke, his voice carried the quiet certainty of someone describing simple facts. "The pirates thought they had won," he said. "They controlled the hostages, they had good defensive positions, and they figured I couldn't risk civilian lives with the kind of tactics I'd used on the others." Admiral Chen activated her display device, and new images appeared above the table. These showed the hostage area in detail, a massive converted cargo bay where 3,000 miners and their families sat in terrified groups while 45 armed pirates watched every entrance. They were right about one thing, Morrison continued. I couldn't use explosions or environmental attacks without risking civilian casualties. So I used something else. What? High Admiral Korath asked, his mandibles clicking with anticipation. Morrison's expression was completely calm. Psychology. The display showed Morrison approaching the main entrance to the hostage area. He was alone, carrying no visible weapons, walking with the unhurried stride of someone taking an evening stroll. You walked up to 45 armed enemies. Without weapons? Commander Zephyx asked, his crystal form flickering with disbelief. I knocked on their door and asked to talk, Morrison replied simply. General Thox leaned forward, his mountain-like frame creaking with interest. What did you say to them? Morrison looked around the table at the assembled aliens. I told them who I was. Chen activated an audio file. Morrison's voice filled the great hall, calm and conversational as if he were discussing the weather. This is Master Sergeant Morrison. I'd like to speak with whoever's in charge in there. The response came immediately, filled with nervous bravado. Go away! We have hostages! We'll kill them if you try anything! Morrison's recorded voice remained perfectly calm. I'm not here to try anything. I just want to talk. You boys have been running around my station for 6 days now, and I figure it's time we met properly. Your station? The pirate's voice cracked slightly. This isn't your station. Sure it is. I've been living in the walls for almost a week now. I know every pipe, every wire, every way in and out. I know where you sleep, what you eat, and which of you cries at night when he thinks nobody's listening. Damelo. Silence that followed was broken only by nervous whispers from inside the hostage area. I know about Tommy there by the north wall, Morrison's voice continued conversationally. Kid's only 19, joined up with you boys because he thought it would be exciting. He's been throwing up every time he has to point his gun at civilians. How do you know that? The pirate leader's voice was no longer filled with bravado. I know about Captain Rodriguez, too. Former military, discharged for cowardice under fire. He's been telling you boys that soldiers like me are all about following rules and protecting innocents, that we'll never risk civilian lives to complete a mission. The audio continued, but Chen paused it to let the aliens absorb what they were hearing. You were conducting psychological warfare, Ambassador Lyrian observed, her mental voice carrying new understanding. Morrison nodded. Fear is the most powerful weapon in the galaxy, more powerful than any gun, any bomb, any ship. The pirates were already scared because I'd eliminated all their friends. All I had to do was make them understand exactly what they were dealing with. What did you tell them? The Ice Lord's representative asked, her voice like wind across frozen mountains. Morrison's expression grew distant. I told them the truth, Chen. Reactivated the audio file. Morrison's voice continued, still conversational, but carrying an undertone that made the great hall feel colder. Here's what Captain Rodriguez didn't tell you boys. He's right that soldiers like me will do anything to protect innocent lives, but he's wrong about what anything includes. What do you mean? The pirate leader's voice was barely a whisper. I mean that when you threaten innocent people under my protection, you stop being criminals and become rabid animals. And there's only one thing you do with rabid animals. The silence on the recording stretched for nearly a full minute before Morrison spoke again. I've killed over 2 million of your kind, boys, pirates, terrorists, anyone who thought they could hurt innocent people and get away with it. You want to know the difference between you and them? What difference? The voice was shaking now. They're all dead. You're not. Yet. Chen paused the recording again. Around the table, alien warriors who had seen battles across countless worlds found themselves leaning forward, drawn into the psychological duel that had played out in the depths of Thermopylae Station. The pirates were experienced criminals, Chen explained. They understood violence, understood threats, but they had never encountered someone who spoke about killing with the same tone others used to discuss routine maintenance. Morrison pointed to the display, which now showed heat signatures inside the hostage area. The pirate positions were clearly marked, but what caught the aliens' attention was how those positions had changed during Morrison's conversation. The pirates were moving, Korath observed, repositioning themselves. They were panicking, Morrison corrected. Fear makes people stupid. The more scared they got, the more mistakes they made. The display showed the pirates abandoning their carefully planned defensive positions to cluster together in the center of the cargo bay, using the hostages as shields, while they tried to figure out what to do about the quiet human who had just announced his intention to kill them all. What happened next? Zephyx asked, his crystal form bright with anticipation. Chen reactivated the audio. Morrison's voice continued, still calm but now carrying a weight that made the recording equipment seem to struggle with the sound. I'm going to give you boys one chance to do the right thing. Send out the hostages, all of them, unharmed. Do that, and I'll make your deaths quick. And if we don't? The pirate leader's voice was barely audible. Morrison was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his words carried the promise of nightmares. Then I'll come in there and show you why they call me the Reaper. The recording ended, leaving the great hall in complete silence. The aliens stared at Morrison, trying to understand how words alone could be used as weapons. Did they surrender? Lyrian asked, though her mental voice suggested she already knew the answer. Morrison shook his head. They tried to negotiate. Negotiate? Thox asked. What did they offer? They said they'd release half the hostages if I let them escape with the other half. The temperature in the hall seemed to drop several degrees. Around the table, representatives of species that had conquered star systems suddenly understood that they were listening to something beyond their experience. What was your response? Korath asked, though his clicking mandibles suggested he wasn't sure he wanted to know. Morrison's expression never changed. I told them that negotiations had ended when they threatened innocent people. Then I came in to collect them. Chen activated a new display. This one showed the layout of the hostage area with Morrison's infiltration route marked in blue. But instead of the complex approach the aliens expected, the route was startlingly simple. Morrison had walked through the front door. You assaulted 45 armed pirates head-on? Zephyx asked, his voice carrying disbelief. I introduced myself properly, Morrison corrected. The display showed security camera footage from inside the hostage area. The image quality was poor, but what it showed made every alien in the hall lean forward in fascination. Morrison entered the cargo bay like he owned it. No weapons visible, no armor, no backup. Just a quiet human in a simple uniform walking into a room full of desperate pirates like he was attending a business meeting. The pirates opened fire immediately, Chen narrated as the footage showed muzzle flashes erupting throughout the cargo bay. 45 weapons firing at a single target. How did you survive? The Machine Collective's representative asked, its electronic voice struggling with the impossibility of what the cameras had recorded. Morrison pointed to the display. I knew the room better than they did. The security footage showed Morrison moving through the cargo bay like he was dancing with death itself. He seemed to know exactly where each pirate would be, exactly when they would fire, exactly how to move to avoid their shots while getting closer to his targets. You had memorized their positions, Lyrian realized. More than that, Morrison replied. I had studied them for 6 days. I knew their habits, their skills, their personalities. I knew which ones would panic first, which ones would try to run, which ones would stand and fight. The footage continued, showing Morrison systematically eliminating pirates while 3,000 hostages cowered in the center of the room. But what struck the aliens was the precision of his movements. No wasted motion, no unnecessary violence, no risk to civilian lives. 17 seconds, Chen announced. From the time Sergeant Morrison entered the room until the last pirate was eliminated. 17 seconds. 45 armed enemies in 17 seconds. Korath's voice carried awe and disbelief in equal measure. Morrison nodded. Had to be fast. The longer it took, the more likely someone would get hurt accidentally. How is such speed possible? Thox demanded. Even our enhanced warriors could not achieve such efficiency. Morrison looked around the table at the assembled aliens. You're still thinking about it wrong. You're thinking about it like a fight between equals. What was it then? Zephyx asked. Morrison's eyes grew cold. It was an extermination. The word hung in the air like a death sentence. Around the table, beings who commanded fleets that could sterilize worlds suddenly understood that they were in the presence of something they had never encountered before. The pirates thought they were warriors, Morrison continued. They thought having guns made them dangerous. They thought threatening innocent people made them powerful. He pointed to the security footage, which showed the final moments of the battle. They learned the difference between having a weapon and being one. Chen activated the final file. This one showed the aftermath. 3,000 rescued hostages being led to safety while Morrison stood alone in the cargo bay, surrounded by the bodies of 45 pirates who had learned too late that some humans don't negotiate with those who threaten the innocent. All hostages rescued safely, Chen reported. 0 civilian casualties. Mission complete. The silence in the Great Hall stretched for minutes. Finally, Ambassador Lyrian spoke, her mental voice carrying a mixture of awe and something that might have been fear. In all our databases across thousands of worlds and millions of conflicts, we have no record of a single warrior achieving such tactical supremacy. Morrison shrugged. Different worlds, different problems. On Earth, we learned a long time ago that sometimes the only way to protect the innocent is to become something the guilty fear more than death. High Admiral Korath stood slowly, his 12-foot frame towering over the table. Master Sergeant Morrison, in our culture, warriors are judged not just by their kill count, but by the honor of their victories. You saved 3,000 innocents while defeating impossible odds. This is beyond unprecedented. Commander Zephyx's crystal form glowed with approval. We have underestimated your species. If one human can accomplish this, what could an army of humans achieve against the Devourers? General Thox nodded gravely. The Kragan Republic withdraws all objections to human membership. We would be honored to fight alongside such warriors. Morrison remained at attention, his weathered face showing no emotion. With respect, sirs, I'm just one soldier. My planet has millions like me, men and women who will do whatever it takes to protect the innocent. No, Lyrian corrected, her mental voice filled with newfound respect. You represent something the galaxy has never seen, a species that produces warriors who fight not for conquest or glory, but for the protection of others. Admiral Chen stepped forward. The human military doctrine is simple. Leave no one behind, protect the innocent, and never surrender when defending what's right. Korath's mandibles clicked in what Morrison had learned was the insectoid equivalent of laughter. The Devourers have conquered 17 star systems through overwhelming force and terror tactics. They have never faced an enemy that turns disadvantage into advantage. Zephyx's form brightened with anticipation. When the Devourers learn that humanity has joined the Galactic Defense Council, they will investigate. They will want to know about our new allies' capabilities. Morrison allowed himself a rare smile. Let them come investigate. They'll find out the same thing those pirates learned. Which is? Lyrian asked. Morrison's smile grew colder. Sometimes the most dangerous. Human is the one you underestimate. The words hung in the crystal dome like a promise and a warning combined. Around the massive table, 12 different alien species found themselves looking at a quiet human with entirely new eyes. The laughter and dismissal that had filled the chamber when Morrison first entered had been replaced by something approaching reverence. Ambassador Lyrian was the first to break the silence. Her starlight form shimmered as she processed what she had witnessed. Master Sergeant Morrison, in all our records spanning millions of years and thousands of worlds, we have never encountered a warrior who combined such tactical brilliance with such absolute commitment to protecting innocent life. High Admiral Korath's compound eyes focused on Morrison with laser intensity. Your kill count stunned us, but your methods have redefined our understanding of what warfare can be. Morrison remained at attention, his weathered face showing no pride or satisfaction. I did my job, sir. Nothing more. Nothing more? Commander Zefix's crystal form flickered with something approaching amazement. You eliminated over 2 million enemies in a single engagement while ensuring 0 civilian casualties. That is not nothing more. That is legendary, General Thox stood, his mountain-like frame casting shadows across the table. Among the Kregan Republic, standing was a sign of ultimate respect reserved for the greatest warriors. In my culture, we have songs about heroes who saved thousands. We have no songs for someone who saved thousands while killing millions, because we never believed such a thing was possible. Morrison looked around the table at the assembled aliens. Despite being the smallest being in the room, his presence somehow filled the enormous space. Different worlds, different challenges. On Earth, we've learned that protecting innocent people sometimes requires becoming something the guilty fear more than death itself. And how many humans possess such capabilities? The Ice Lord's representative asked, her voice like wind across frozen peaks. Admiral Chen stepped forward. Earth's military maintains active duty forces of approximately 50 million personnel across all branches. Each one takes an oath to protect innocent life and defend those who cannot defend themselves. The silence that followed was deafening. Korath's mandibles clicked rapidly as he processed the implications. 50 million warriors with training and mindset similar to Master Sergeant Morrison. The sergeant represents the upper tier of our special operations forces, Chen clarified. But every human soldier is trained in the same fundamental principles: adaptability, persistence, and absolute commitment to protecting civilian life. Zefix's form brightened with understanding. You are saying that while Morrison is exceptional, even among humans, he is not unique. That's correct, Chen confirmed. Earth has produced thousands of soldiers with similar capabilities. Morrison is remarkable, but he's not alone. The alien representatives exchanged glances filled with implications that stretched across star systems. The Machine Collective's representative spoke in electronic tones that carried new respect. Initial assessment of human military capability requires complete revision. Indeed, agreed the Thermal Brotherhood's delegate, his flame-covered form burning brighter with excitement. We assumed human limitations were technological. We did not consider psychological advantages. Morrison spoke quietly, his voice carrying across the vast hall. With respect, you're still thinking about this wrong. Every eye in the chamber fixed on him. Lyrian's mental voice carried curiosity. How so, Sergeant? Morrison looked directly at her. You're thinking about humans as warriors. That's not what we are. Then what are you? Korath asked. Morrison's expression grew distant, as if he was seeing something beyond the crystal dome. We're survivors. The word echoed through the chamber, like a revelation. Chen activated her display device one final time and new images appeared above the table. These showed Earth itself, a blue-green world that looked peaceful and beautiful from space. Earth is a death world, Chen explained. Our planet has tried to kill us since we first stood upright. Ice ages, volcanic eruptions, Earthquakes, floods, predators, diseases, asteroid impacts. For millions of years, everything on our world was designed to eliminate our species. Yet you survived, Thox observed. More than survived, Morrison corrected. We thrived. We learned to adapt to anything, overcome any obstacle, survive any threat. Earth taught us that the universe doesn't care about fair fights or reasonable odds. The display showed images of human history, cave paintings depicting mammoth hunts, ancient armies crossing frozen mountains, explorers venturing into unknown oceans, scientists working in laboratories during plague years. Other species developed. In relatively stable environments, Chen continued, they evolved superior technology, greater physical strength, longer lifespans, but they never learned the one skill that Earth demanded from its children. Which is? Lyrian asked. Morrison's eyes were steady as stone. How to win when winning should be impossible. The images on the display shifted to show human military history. Not the grand battles or glorious victories, but the desperate last stands, the impossible rescues, the missions where success required sacrificing everything for people they had never met. Every human soldier learns the same lesson, Morrison continued. Sometimes the right thing to do is also the hardest thing to do. Sometimes protecting innocent people means accepting that you probably won't live to see them safe. Sometimes winning means being willing to become the monster so that others don't have to. Korath leaned forward, his voice carrying new understanding. You do not fight for conquest or glory. You fight because you cannot bear to see innocents suffer. That's right, Morrison confirmed. Earth taught us that survival isn't about being the strongest or the smartest or the fastest. It's about being willing to do whatever it takes to protect the people who matter. Zephix's crystal form pulsed with realization. This is why your kill count means nothing to you. The numbers are not trophies. They are simply the price you paid to save lives. Morrison nodded. Every pirate I killed on Thermopylae Station was someone who threatened 3,000 innocent people. I didn't kill them because I enjoyed it. I killed them because they left me no choice. And if the Devourers threaten innocent worlds, Thox said slowly, humanity will respond the same way. The Devourers have been conquering through terror and overwhelming force, Chen observed. They've never faced an enemy that sees impossible odds as a normal Tuesday. The alien representatives around the table began to understand the true implications of humanity joining the Galactic Defense Council. This wasn't just about adding another military force to their alliance. This was about introducing a completely new kind of warfare to the galaxy. The Devourers' standard tactics involved destroying resistance through fear, Lyrian noted. They broadcast their victories to terrorize potential enemies into surrender. Morrison's smile was colder than the space between stars. That's going to backfire on them. How? Korath asked. Because humans don't surrender when innocent people are threatened. Fear doesn't make us weak. It makes us dangerous. The Ice Lord's representative spoke, her voice carrying new respect. When the Devourers attack human worlds, they will expect quick conquest followed by terror-induced submission from other species. Instead, Chen said, they'll find that every human civilian they threaten creates another enemy who will never stop hunting them. Morrison nodded. Earth has 7 billion people. Every one of them has family, friends, neighbors they care about. Threaten those people and you don't create fear. You create 7 billion humans with nothing left to lose. The implications rippled through the assembled aliens like shock waves. Zephix's form flickered with calculations beyond normal comprehension. The Devourers' terror tactics will exponentially increase human resistance rather than diminish it. Every atrocity they commit will create more enemies, Thox realized. Enemies who understand that surrender is not an option. Morrison looked around the table at beings who commanded fleets that could crack planets. The Devourers think they understand warfare because they've conquered 17 star systems. They think overwhelming force and terror tactics make them unbeatable. But they have never faced Earth, Chen added. Earth taught us something the rest of the galaxy never learned, Morrison continued. Sometimes the only way to stop a bully is to hurt them so badly that they never want to fight again. Korath's mandibles clicked with something that might have been anticipation. When the Devourers encounter human resistance, they will escalate their tactics. They'll try to break human morale with increased brutality, Lyrian observed. Morrison's expression grew cold as winter night. That's when they'll learn the most important lesson Earth ever taught us. Which is? Zephix asked. Morrison's voice carried the weight of millions of years of human survival. The more you threaten what we love, the more creative we get about making you regret it. The silence that followed was broken by General Thox's rumbling laughter. The Devourers have conquered 17 star systems by making their enemies afraid. They are about to learn what it feels like to be afraid themselves. Indeed, Korath agreed. They will investigate Earth's military capabilities and assume they understand human limitations. They'll see our primitive weapons and limited technology, Chen said. They'll conclude that humans are no threat to their advanced forces. Morrison allowed himself a grim smile. They'll think they're fighting another conventional military. They won't realize they're about to face an entire species of survivors who view impossible odds as a personal challenge. Ambassador Lyrian's Starlight form shimmered with something approaching excitement. The first time the Devourers attack a human world, they will expect quick surrender after demonstrating their superior firepower. Instead, Morrison said quietly, they'll find that every human they hurt just made the rest of us more determined to hunt them down. The alien representatives around the table began to smile, or perform whatever equivalent their species used, to express satisfaction. They were beginning to understand that humanity's addition to the Galactic Defense Council would change everything about their war with the Devourers. Master Sergeant Morrison, Korath said formally, the Hive Collective, withdraws all objections to human membership in this council. We would be honored to fight alongside warriors of such caliber. The Viridian Empire agrees, Zephix added, his crystal form glowing with approval. Your species represents capabilities we never imagined possible. One by one, the other representatives voiced their agreement. The Thermal Brotherhood, the Ice Lords, the Machine Collective, the Kregan Republic, every voice that had opposed human membership now spoke in favor of immediate acceptance. Finally, only Ambassador Lyrian remained. Her mental voice filled the chamber with certainty that resonated in every mind present. The ethereal realm not only supports human membership, but formally requests that Earth take a leadership role in developing new strategies against the Devourers. Morrison looked around the table at beings who commanded technologies beyond human imagination. We're honored by your confidence, but you should understand something before you finalize this decision. What? Korath asked. Morrison's eyes grew, distant again, seeing things that had happened in the dark tunnels of Thermopylae Station and would happen again in the dark spaces between stars. Once humans join this war, it doesn't end until every devourer is dead or gone from this galaxy. We don't negotiate with species that threaten innocent life. We don't accept conditional surrenders from enemies who commit atrocities. We don't stop hunting until the threat is completely eliminated. The chamber fell silent as the aliens absorbed the implications of Morrison's words. You are saying that human involvement will transform this conflict from a defensive war into a war of extermination, Lyrian observed. Morrison nodded. The Devourers made their choice when they started eating civilized worlds. Now they'll live with the consequences. Admiral Chen stepped forward. The vote to admit Earth to the Galactic Defense Council will also be a vote to fundamentally change the nature of this war. Are you prepared for that? Around the table, representatives of 12 different species considered what it would mean to unleash humanity against the Devourers. They thought about Morrison's quiet efficiency, his absolute commitment to protecting innocent life, and his willingness to become whatever was necessary to achieve that goal. They thought about 50 million humans with similar training and mindset. They thought about 7 billion humans who would never surrender while innocents were threatened. They thought about what would happen when a species of survivors encountered enemies who had spent 50 years winning through terror and overwhelming force. One by one, they voted. The decision was unanimous. 6 months later, High Admiral Korath would stand in the ruins of a Devourer command ship and update Morrison's file with a new designation. Master Sergeant Morrison, the human who changed everything. The Devourers had learned too late that there are some species in the galaxy you should never threaten, and humans were at the top of that list. In the end, Morrison's kill count had indeed stunned the galaxy, but not because of the numbers, because of what those numbers represented. A species that would sacrifice everything to protect innocent life, and the terrifying creativity they brought to eliminating those who threatened it. The Devourers never recovered from their first encounter with human military doctrine. The galaxy never forgot the lesson Earth taught them. Sometimes the most dangerous enemy is the one who fights not for conquest, but for love.